GT Divide podcast coming at you with episode 5 of our 5-part things God will do to help you recover from mental abuse in relationships, friendships, with your parents, whatever walk of life that it may be in. Um, God is here to help, obviously. Um, so I will recap some of the other things that we kind of talked about. Episode 1 kind of was um, an introductory to all things mental illness, and some of the reasons why people do the things they do. Some of the time, the reason why people act the way they act. Sometimes the reason people treat you the way they treat you. Um, so we talked about God rebuilding your self worth by strengthening your identity in Him. So that was number one. Two, God will show you that He is actually the center of all things, not the individual that mentally or that mentally abused you in whatever relationship aspect. God will give you wisdom to on how to deal with this said person. God will give you a righteous anger, supernatural grace towards that person. So we kind of talked about forgiveness in the last one, which is key. Um, and then the to kind of correlate the last. So there's two that are encompassed in this last one that we're going to talk about today. So it may take me a little bit longer than normal to talk about it, but fifth thing, 5/5, we'll say 5A. We'll say 5A, guys, is going to be God will give you the insight to help other people avoid the abuse from said person with mental illness. So we kind of talked about mental illness, the difference between but my difference between mental illness and mental health struggles. I look at like things like depression, anxiety. Those are things that I believe are kind of in the mental health realm. Mental illness is something that requires not only a medical diagnosis for sure, but it requires a lot of treatment, a lot of therapeutic treatment, behavioral, cognitive type of treatment. Um, I kind of place narcissism, borderline personality disorder in that category, right? Sociopath, psychopath, those type of things all go into that. They all caveat that thing, right? And so, what we're saying here is, He will give you the wisdom to be able to give to other people based on your experience. Because one thing that I know about wisdom is this: that you wisdom is the understanding that you don't have to go through what another person went through in order for you to be able to have the understanding, right? To be able to have the knowledge. This person is dropping wisdom on you, dropping knowledge on you on what they've been through, and not necessarily that you have to go through it yourself, right? That's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom is passed down through generations, and it can be about just about anything. And so, last but not least, God's judgment upon a person that has mentally abused you. You know, there, there's there's a couple pieces, a couple caveats to this that I got in my notes. I got notes everywhere. Sorry, guys. Um, so any sins that they committed, and He will deal with them in His perfect way. So if you've been abused in any way, God wants you to know that no one is getting away with anything. So obviously, though it could be past trauma, though it could be past relationships, it could be a whole slew of things that cause people to come into these type of disorders. It doesn't excuse behavior that happens due to this type of personality disorder or these type of disorders that people deal with. So basically, what it's saying here is that just because um, you know you have endured some things in your past that has caused you to be like this. Um, what you do while you're like this, you still have to pay the ultimate price. You still have to pay the cost, right? Your ass ain't cash. You can't be cash a check your ass can't handle. And so in this situation, what he's saying is that though this person that has mentally abused you, um, you understand, you've forgiven them, so you've gone through all the other processes and you're forgiving them, but it doesn't mean that what they did is going to go unpunished. Like there's going to be consequences to every action, whether or not the intent was there or not. And sometimes when you have mental illnesses, sometimes the intent ain't really there. Like they don't. It's not like they don't want to actually just hurt you. Especially people BPD, they don't want to just. Oh, I'm just going to hurt this person. No, that's not how they think. That's not how their minds operate. Right? They're reacting to stimulus because their brain has been wired differently. But that doesn't excuse their actions. So when they do make those actions, they still have to, um, they still have to take on the consequences, right? There's consequences to every action. So even those overt actions there's consequences to those actions, is what basically what he's saying. Um, all sin will be dealt with. If someone repents and asks for God's grace, God will put those sins on the cross. And so I think God is given the opportunity here for a person who has done that. And once again, guys, I'm not saying that this person that has mentally abused you just gets away scot clean. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is what's being said is that God shows the same grace to that person as He does to you, and He wouldn't be the God that we say He is if He did not do that. And so you have to look at the situation and understand, okay, if He is giving grace to this person, He'll give grace to me because I'm gonna make mistakes too. Um, and so he said that if you repent and you've turned to him, he will be able to put those sins upon the cross. But by the same word, the heavens and earth that now exist are stored up for fire, being kept until the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. That's 2 Peter's chapter 3, verse 7 through 10. So if that person does not repent and does not seek God's grace through Jesus, that person will reap what they sowed and endure a punishment that is worse than anything our human minds can fathom. And so obviously you have to turn back to him. So what does that mean for a person that has mental health or mental illness, some type of mental illness, whether it be narcissism, BPD, sociopath, psychopath, whatever it may be? Number one, the number one thing you have to do is recognize that there's an issue. So recognize that there is a problem that is persisting, and so you need to recognize, okay, there's something going on. I need to do something needs to change, right? Turn to God, allow Him to work in you. But then you also, I will be honest, I'm a Christian, but I will be real with you guys. Therapists, go to counseling, right? Go to counseling so that way you can get some more cognitive things that will help you inside the brain because there's so many different things they can do. There's self-aware narcissists that have YouTube channels, right? Lee Hammock is one of them. He's a self-aware narcissist. So he knows he took it upon himself to understand that he was hurting people, right? And so he said, I want to change. I don't want to just keep being like this. So he went and did what he had to do. He went and put the time in. It takes time. These things don't just happen overnight. You're not just going to change overnight. It's going to be you got to be persistent and consistent, right? All the time in order for you to get where you're trying to go. So as you're trying to swing the pendulum back to more of a normalcy in how you operate in your relationships, your friendships, your with your coworkers at work, with your bosses, your colleagues. So as you're trying to turn the swing the pendulum to where you're not operating as said person, this person with this mental illness, you rather operate a little bit more baseline. It's going to take a lot of work from a lot of different angles to get you there. And you also have to recognize the pain. Like sometimes people look back at their childhood, they look back and they don't, and even for me, as I kind of spent some time with my counselor, I'm looking back at my childhood. I know I had a rough childhood, but when I had it so rough, it's hard to pinpoint any one thing. Like it's hard to be like, this right here is the issue that caused me to be the way that I am today. And so it took a lot of time for me to look back and say, okay, what happened? What are some things that happened? How was I feeling during certain situations? And there's a lot of stuff that happened when I was 2, 3, 4 years old. Um, and it's crazy that your brain remembers stuff. It's like I was reading the book by John Deloney, Building a Non-Anxious Life, and he talks about anxiety. He talks about how your brain puts a pin mark in every single time that you get in a situation that feels like it could be life threatening, right? May not for not it may not be life threatening, but your brain keeps track of how things affect you, right? So how things affected you and how things currently affect you are one and the same. So how things affected you in the past. So say you're a police officer and you show up to a call and somebody shoots at you, right? You're gonna put a pin in. Your brain's gonna put a pin in, like, and remember certain things about the situation that is gonna cause. If you get in a similar situation again, your brain's gonna automatically know, okay, we've been here before. We need to do this, 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 and this. This is the possibility of what could happen. This is what we don't want to happen. This is how we can possibly prevent this from happening. We don't fully have control over it not happening, but it's kind of just throwing these analytics at you quickly. And so your brain is doing that constantly with every single situation, every single interaction. So you might have interactions with people and your brain is doing that. And so, as you get to a point of healing on the other side, um, this last part really doesn't have much to do with you and your personal. But by now you should be healed. By now you should be to a point where um, you've given yourself enough time and space to be able to collect what you need to collect mentally to be able to move forward. Um, and it's not necessarily that you always move on, because sometimes these people that mentally abuse you are going to be family members, going to be a brother. It's always your like if it's your brother, you're always going to have that brother for the rest of your life. So it's not always about moving on. It's more so about moving forward. How do you push forward in these situations? And so I think that we get so caught up and bottled up with moving on that we forget that not every situation requires a move on. Some situations require a move forward. You push forward. You close this, you flip this page, and now you've got a new chapter. And I think that that's where people need to have the right mindset, is to understand that you don't always have to move on past a person if it's a friend, right? Now, I mean, if it's a romantic relationship, obviously you got some questions that you need to have answered and some things that you need to do. Um, but at the same time, you need to understand that even in a romantic relationship, you don't necessarily have to move on, but you have to move forward, because you can't. What you can't do is go back to what it was. You can't go back to that same space again. And so people try to get in that same space. They're like, man, I just want to be comfortable, because they like where it was at. They liked how it felt. But they don't realize is that when you go back there to that same place again, you're going to get to the same outcome. In order for you to get a different outcome, you have to change things about the situation. So that's why I say move forward in these instances. And so, as you know, from a healing standpoint, moving forward is huge. I mean, huge in these instances, because you have to possess the ability to be able to have gone through all the pieces, the forgiveness, the rebuilding of yourself, um, the strengthening of yourself. You have to be able to trust again. It's hard to trust after something like that. Like you're going from scratch. Like you build everything up to a point, and then you get to this point, and then it gets torn back down. And so you have to build back up to that point. And so my advice to you guys out there is just to keep pushing and move forward. You don't always have to move on from a person, but you can sometimes move forward in these situations, in these instances. Um, and if you ever need help, if you're ever going through it and you feel like, I mean, if you feel like your partner may be struggling with this, reach out. If you feel like you are struggling on the other end, you're the receiving end of this, reach out. Counseling will help you immensely. It will help you, because I think the hardest thing for people that are survivors and thrivers of these people with mental illness is that they want closure. You're not going to get closure, because you got to understand who you're dealing with. And every situation is different. A narcissist is going to be different than somebody with BPD. They're going to be different than somebody who may be a sociopath or a psychopath. Like, they're all going to be different, and they're all going to have their own traits for their personality disorder, or their disorder, that their mental illness that they're dealing with. And so we have to understand that they're not all the same. So there's no one size fits all where it's like, this is how it's always going to be, this is how they always are. No. Like, people with narcissist personality disorder, um, they it's really built around boosting themselves up. They have to be above everybody else. That's literally what it is. People with BPD, it's literally, I don't want you to leave. I don't want you to leave. I want you to leave, but I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. Please don't go. But I want you to go. But I don't want you to go. You need to stay, but you need to get the heck up out of here. Like, that's literally back and forth inside their brain, right? And so, can a person with BPD actually love you? Yes, they can actually love you. They can I mean, they love a lot. They are lovers that love a lot. And so we got to understand that, and we have to understand that, you got a psychopath or sociopath or pathological, or you got people with multiple personality disorder, where they have multiple personalities that come out of them. You've got all these things that people are dealing with, and so you have to understand that when you're caught up in a situation and you're on the other end, you got to realize what you're dealing with. So that's where counseling comes into play. You can talk to your counselor about the relationship, the friendship, whatever it may be, and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. This is how I feel. And tell them about the instances. Tell them about the time that you dealt with this person, what it was like, how you felt, because all those things encompass something. Um, One thing I noticed is I'd get anxious. Like, my body was anxious as heck. That's when I knew something was up. So my body started telling me something, started giving me signals, because your body, the chemical up and down. eventually your body's going to be like, this is not good. Like this is not a good thing, and your body will sound the alarm. In the book, in the Building a Non-Anxious Life, that was one thing that really stuck out to me, is that it literally said in there that you know your anxiety is a friend. And so when your bells and those alarms are going off, like, are you going to sit in a house where the fire alarm's going off and just let it go off? There's smoke in there. You're just going to sit there and chill? Like, is that what you're going to do? No, because of the fire alarm's going off, that alerts you that something's going on. You may not even see, you can't even see carbon monoxide, but that alarm knows. It can detect it, right? That's what anxiety is. The anxiety detects things that you may not be detecting. And so utilize that. So when you're going to counseling, talk to them and tell them what's going on. Utilize those things. Utilize what your body is telling you. That is key. That's 100%. That's extremely important to utilize that, guys. And so this is GT the Vibe podcast, though. I appreciate you guys rocking with us through these. We're going to continue to push. Mental health is key. Love, relationships. Um, from a Christianity standpoint, we are a Christian podcast. Um, and so I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're taking out the science. I'm not taking out the science. Science, like, people don't know, people don't understand. Just because you're a Christian don't mean that there ain't no science involved. Like, I understand science. I understand that a person can get these disorders at a young age. But I also understand that, if you're reading the Bible about Jezebel, right, evil can cause some of these things. Demonic stuff can cause some of these things. I also understand that too. So just because I say it a certain way don't mean that I'm like, oh no, I'm just totally against science. I don't want you guys to think that, because that is not correct at all. That's far from the truth. But this is GT the Vibe podcast, episode 5. So we're done with this series. On to the next, guys. We'll see you later.